Alright, legends, welcome along to Here's Rodder's Reviews. We're getting into The Crow, City of Angels in this episode. The follow-up to The Crow, obviously, the first follow-up. Not a bad movie by any stretch. Not as iconic as the original, but this is a very, very good follow-up to that movie. And one that I enjoy a heck of a lot more than most people. Like, we've seen it with everything that's going on with the reboot, or the remake, whatever you want to call it, of The Crow. Everybody, the vast majority of people anyway, in my experience, are jumping up and saying, no, don't touch it, Crow, should have been left alone. And yes, it is what it is. I am in that camp as well. So The Crow, although I've said it before in prior videos, if you're going to do anything else with The Crow, make a sequel. You don't have to reboot the original one. Continue it on. The Crow, City of Angels is a fairly good example of continuing this series on, doing something a little bit different, but still within the universe. Obviously, with a story like The Crow, that's the downside to The Crow. If you're going to continue it on, it is one of these stories that can get pretty repetitive because it's a very simple idea of The Crow. Would you believe we have a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit right past the side of the house? And you hear that nutcase. The idea of The Crow is a very, very simple one, where the Crow brings back a tortured soul to put right the things that went wrong while they were alive, and at the end of that, they're allowed to return back, and then they can rest in peace. The Crow, City of Angels, is almost beat for beat exactly what The Crow was. We have another person in this movie, a character called Ash, who is murdered along with his son by a gang after they see a gang killing. So yes, they're shot, tied up together, thrown off a dock at the beginning of the movie, and The Crow brings Ash back to put this right, for him to hunt down the gang, settle the score for himself. But in this one here, genius bit of the thing that jumps out to me in the Crow movies as you're moving forward is you're working out how each time the Crow makeup is going to happen, it's slightly different in each Crow movie. Other than this one, this is almost exactly the same Crow makeup that Brandon Lee had, and the way that that's done is because the character of Sarah has been brought from the first movie to this one. She's now grown up. She's living in LA, and she's having dreams of the Crow, and the Crow is kind of talking to her. She becomes a guide along with the Crow for Ash. She gets him, and he's a mechanic, and when they finally meet up, he doesn't want to believe what she's telling him. He runs to the place where he lived at and worked at, and you see these paintings that the son was making. You see all this in flashbacks again, like the original movie, and Sarah points out, these paints belong to your son, and he's like, yes, they are. So she takes the white paint and the paintbrush and whatnot, and she actually draws the makeup on his face for him. So she is, this is a tribute. The second film, this is like an in-universe tribute to Eric Draven in the second movie, where Sarah comes across from the first movie and gives Ash the same makeup that I was going to say Brandon Lee had. Well, of course Brandon Lee, but Eric Draven. Yeah, so that was a nice touch. So he goes off on his hunt to take down this gang that's overseen by Judah Earl, who is like the the top dollar of this movie. He's like the drug lord of LA in this movie. And yes, his lower downs as the ones that took out Ash. Lower downs is not even a way of speaking about some of these gangs. But yes, Ash starts working his way through the gang leading up towards Judah. But in this movie, Judah also has, like in the first movie, Top Dollar had the woman there was kind of, in touch with the paranormal side of things and works out the power of the crew and whatnot. That happens in this movie as well. Only instead of just trying to take out the crew to take away the power that Ash has, Judah actually sacrifices the crew in a ritual to transfer the crew's strength from Ash to himself, so he becomes unstoppable at the end of the movie. And yes, Ash manages to take him out by using the power of all the crews for his side, and takes her all out with the crews are actually called down and take him out, and probably the cheesiest special effect you're ever likely to see. Jumped right over a heck of a lot of stuff in this movie. But of course at the end he manages to put right what went wrong. He gets the chance to rest again. Sarah is written out of this movie as well. She dies in the final confrontation with Judah. She gets stabbed and passes away. And there's a moment where Ash is on the ground. He's holding her body as she's dying. You get a flashback to a painting that she had been painting earlier on in the movie that kind of showed this. It was like a premonition of what was going to happen to her. Yeah, it's a nice, tasty little movie. We have got Iggy Pop in here as the leader of the gang, and he plays a character called Curve. And if memory serves, if Iggy Pop's tour schedule had been slightly different when the first Crow movie was made, he would have been cast in it, and he would have had the role of Fun Boy in the first one. And if that had happened, obviously he would have ended up in the guy that was responsible for the accident that took out Brandon Lee. So that's something to think about. I wonder, does it still play in his mind after all these years? What if? But he's on here, does a great job as Curve. Fantastic. Just like the leader in the first one, T-Bird was a great character. This one as well, he's a bad guy, don't get me wrong, but there's a few moments of humour in this movie where he plays it nice, and you're kind of, I don't like this guy, I shouldn't like this guy. There's some elements of his character here that I'm loving. Very, very good. But the only other thing that happened in this movie that was different than the first one is Sarah and Ash have a moment where she is obviously attracted to Ash from the word go. The crew has brought another person back the way it did for Eric and Shelley. And Eric and Shelley, of course, were big influences in young Sarah's life. So this guy here is bringing up a lot of feelings for Sarah, and she's obviously attracted to him. He's attracted to her. So there's a moment within the movie where he kind of questions his resolve. Do I want to actually carry out this mission? What if I decide I don't want to do it and stay here with her? They don't delve too deep into that. There's a moment where the two of them do have a moment of weakness where they're about to perhaps kiss. In her room, she's moving towards him, but he at the last second saying, I can't do this. I have to go and put right what went wrong, and for the memory of my son, I need to do it for him. It is a tasty, tasty little movie. Not just as good as the original one, but it's a good follow-up. And Yes. For me, if I had to choose which of these two was the best, flat out, it's the original Crew. Can't be beaten. But this one here is like slightly below the original Crew. Unfortunately, as we moved forward, and the rest of the movies, they just sort of dipped a little bit more each time. So it's one of these things. And again, for the remake of the Crew, can lightning strike in the same place twice? I don't think it can, because we have already seen from the Crew series itself, it really didn't after the original Crew of Brett and Lee. But the Crew City of Angels was a close runner-up.